I didn't realize I had been erased until I saw my own name missing from the company I helped build. Not reduced, not questioned, just gone. Like I was never part of the family business dispute at all. The strangest part? Everyone acted like it made perfect sense. I grew up believing that loyalty meant something. My parents built our company from scratch, a modest manufacturing business that slowly grew into something stable, something respectable. And from the time I was 16, I was part of it. After school, weekends, summers, I was there, learning bookkeeping before I even knew what finance betrayal meant. Sitting in meetings where I was told, one day this will be yours too. Not just mine, ours. My older sister, Claire, was always the face of the business. Confident, polished, the one who could charm clients in seconds. I was the opposite. Quiet, methodical, the one who stayed late fixing numbers no one else noticed were wrong. We balanced each other. At least, that's what I believed. When my father passed away, everything shifted. Grief does strange things to people. It makes some cling tighter, and others quietly rewrite history. That was the first time I felt it, that subtle, creeping sense that something was off. Claire stepped up quickly, too quickly. She started making decisions without looping me in. Small things at first, vendor changes, staffing adjustments. I told myself it was temporary. We were dealing with loss. Of course things would feel unstable. But then the paperwork started changing. I remember the exact moment. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. I was reviewing financial statements when I noticed a new ownership structure. Claire's name had expanded. Mine? Nowhere. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a clerical error, something simple. But deep down, I felt it. That quiet drop in your stomach when your instincts whisper, this isn't an accident. When I asked her about it, she didn't panic. She smiled. That calm, controlled smile I had trusted my whole life. It's just temporary, she said. Legal restructuring. You wouldn't understand all the details. That was the moment everything shifted. Because for the first time, I realized this wasn't just an inheritance drama. This was a calculated move. And I was already 3 steps behind. I wanted to believe her. That's the part I'm almost embarrassed to admit now. Even when the numbers didn't add up, even when my role in the company started shrinking without explanation, I kept telling myself this wasn't a family business dispute. This was just grief. This was just transition. This was just temporary. But temporary has a way of becoming permanent when you don't question it fast enough. Over the next few weeks, things shifted in subtle, almost invisible ways. Claire began handling all external communication. Clients who used to email me directly suddenly stopped. Vendors I had negotiated contracts with for years now went through her. At first, I thought maybe she was trying to protect me. I had always been the quieter one, the behind-the-scenes operator. Maybe she thought I needed time. That's what I told myself, anyway. Until I noticed the meetings, or more specifically, the meetings I wasn't invited to. It started with 1, then 2, then entire strategy sessions happening without me even knowing they existed. When I asked about it, Claire's answers were always smooth, effortless. Oh, it was last minute. You were busy. It wasn't anything important. That last one always lingered because I knew exactly how important those meetings used to be. I used to be in every single one. The first real crack came from someone I didn't expect. Mark, our operations manager. He had been with the company almost as long as my parents had run it. He pulled me aside one evening as I was packing up. "You okay?" he asked. It seemed like a simple question, but there was something in his tone, something careful, measured, like he already knew the answer. "I'm fine," I said automatically, because that's what I had been trained to say, in business, in family, in everything. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "You haven't been in the new budget discussions." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. That's when the word hit me for the first time. Not just confusion, not just miscommunication, but something heavier, something colder. Finance betrayal. I laughed it off. I actually laughed. I actually laughed in malice. "Claire's just reorganizing things," I said. "You know how she is." Mark didn't laugh. He just looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite place at the time. Now I know what it was. It was pity. That night, I went home and opened every file I could access: financial reports, ownership documents, internal memos, anything that could prove I still belonged there, that I wasn't imagining this family business dispute slowly unfolding right in front of me. And that's when I noticed something else. Access permissions. Files I had always been able to open were now restricted, locked, controlled by Claire. That was the moment the illusion finally started to crack, because this wasn't just about being left out of meetings anymore. This was control, deliberate, quiet, strategic control. And for the first time, I had to ask myself a question I had been avoiding. What if this family business dispute wasn't accidental at all? I didn't confront her right away. That's something people always assume I did. But when you're in the middle of something that feels like a family business dispute, you don't immediately go to war. You hesitate. You question yourself first. For the next few days, I watched. Quietly. Carefully. I started paying attention to things I had ignored before. Emails that suddenly excluded me. Calendar invites that never reached my inbox. Decisions being announced instead of discussed. It was subtle enough that, on the surface, everything looked normal, but underneath, something was being rewritten, and I was being written out of it. When I finally decided to speak to Claire again, I chose my words carefully. Not emotional, not accusatory, just factual. "I noticed I don't have access to several financial files anymore," I said, "and my name isn't listed on the updated ownership structure. Can we go through that together?" She didn't even blink. That was the unsettling part. No hesitation, no surprise, just that same calm expression. "Oh, that," she said lightly. "It's just temporary restructuring. Legal advised me to streamline decision-making." "Streamline?" I repeated. She nodded. "It's easier if one person is officially in charge during transitions. Less confusion." Less confusion. The irony almost made me laugh, because I had never been more confused in my life. But why wasn't I informed? I asked. That's when her tone shifted. Not aggressive, not loud, just slightly sharper. "You've been distracted lately," she said. "I didn't want to overwhelm you." There it was, the first layer of it. Gaslighting wrapped in concern. "I've been handling the accounts every single day," I replied. "I know," she said quickly, "and you've done great, but this is bigger than bookkeeping." That word again, bookkeeping, as if everything I had contributed for years could be reduced to that. That was when I felt it clearly for the first time. Not just doubt, not just confusion, but something deeper, something that felt a lot like finance betrayal. I started noticing how she spoke about me in meetings, not directly to my face, but through others. She prefers to stay behind the scenes. She's not comfortable with high-level decisions. I'm protecting her from unnecessary stress. Each sentence sounded harmless on its own, but together they built a narrative, a version of me that slowly justified my absence. And the worst part? People started believing it. Even Mark. He didn't say it out loud, but I could see the shift, the hesitation when he brought me information, like he wasn't sure how much I was supposed to know anymore. That's when the inheritance drama stopped feeling like a misunderstanding and started feeling like a strategy, a slow, deliberate repositioning. One afternoon, I walked into the office and overheard Claire on the phone. "I've consolidated ownership. It's cleaner this way." I froze. Ownership. Not management, not responsibilities. Ownership. She ended the call and turned around and saw me standing there. For a split second, something flickered across her face. Not guilt, not fear, just calculation. "You should knock," she said calmly, like I was the one crossing the line. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just being pushed out. I was being erased, piece by piece, conversation by conversation. document by document, and if I didn't sue something soon, this family business dispute would be over before I even realized I had lost. The breaking point didn't come with a fight. No shouting, no dramatic confrontation, just a quiet moment that changed everything. It was a Thursday morning when I received the email. Short, formal, cold. Subject line, updated corporate structure, finalized. For a second, I just stared at it. Something about the word finalized made my chest tighten, because deep down, I already knew. I opened the attachment, and there it was. Clear, official, signed. Claire was listed as the sole owner of the company. No shared equity, no mention of me, not even a footnote. It felt unreal, like I was reading someone else's story, someone else's inheritance drama, because there was no way this could be happening to me, not after everything I had given, not after years of building this business together. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I walked straight to Claire's office. No hesitation this time, no second guessing. I knocked once and walked in. She looked up from her desk, completely composed, like she had been expecting this. "I got the email," I said. My voice sounded distant, even to me. She nodded slowly. "Okay?" That was it. No explanation, no acknowledgement, just okay. "Finalized?" I asked. She leaned back slightly, folding her hands together. "Yes, it's done." Done. Such a simple word for something that erased me completely. "How?" I asked. One word, but it carried everything. Every late night, every sacrifice, every ounce of trust I had ever placed in her. She sighed softly, like I was asking something unreasonable. "Dad signed a revised document before he passed," she said. "It gave me controlling interest." My heart dropped. "That's not true," I said immediately. He told you a lot of things," she interrupted gently. Gently, like she was correcting a child. "That document was never shown to me," I said. "It didn't need to be." And that was the moment, the exact moment, something inside me broke. Because this wasn't confusion anymore. This wasn't miscommunication. This was finance betrayal at its core. Calculated, hidden, executed perfectly. "So you let me keep working here," I said slowly. "Of course," she replied. "You're good at what you do. Not partner, not co-owner, just useful." I felt the room go quiet, heavy, like the air itself had shifted. "So what am I now?" I asked. For the first time, her answer took a second. Just a second, but it was enough. "An employee," she said. And there it was, the truth, stripped of all pretense. I didn't say anything after that. I couldn't, because if I opened my mouth, I knew I would either scream or collapse, and I refused to give her either. So I nodded, turned around, and walked out of the office. But the moment I stepped outside, everything hit me at once. The grief, the anger, the humiliation, the realization that I had been slowly pushed out of my own life. I sat in my car for almost an hour, not moving, not thinking, just staring, because I finally understood something that terrified me. This family business dispute wasn't just about losing a company. It was about losing my place in my own family. And for the first time, I stopped asking why and started thinking about something entirely else. What now? I didn't quit. That's what most people would have done. Walked out, slammed the door, cut ties. But that's exactly what Claire expected. And for the first time in my life, I decided not to play the role she had written for me. I showed up the next morning like nothing had happened. Same time, same desk, same quiet routine. If anyone noticed the shift, they didn't say anything. And Claire? She didn't acknowledge it at all. That was the first advantage I realized I had. She thought she had already won this family business dispute, which meant she had stopped watching me closely, so I became invisible. Not erased, invisible. There's a difference. I stopped asking questions, stopped pushing back, stopped reacting. On the surface, I became exactly what she had described me as, the quiet employee, the one who stayed in the background, the one who didn't understand high-level decisions. But underneath, I started paying attention to everything. You learn a lot when people think you don't matter. Conversations become looser, mistakes become more frequent, and control starts slipping in small, almost unnoticeable ways. The first thing I did was rebuild access, not forcefully, not suspiciously, just slowly. Old archived files, shared folders that hadn't been fully restricted, email threads where I was still accidentally included, tiny cracks in the system Claire had built. And through those cracks, I started to see the full picture. The revised document she mentioned, it existed, but not the way she described. It granted her temporary control under specific conditions, conditions that no longer applied. That was the first real confirmation. This wasn't just inheritance drama. This was manipulation, selective truth, a carefully constructed version of reality. But I didn't confront her, not yet, because information without timing is useless. The second thing I did was something even simpler. I started documenting everything, every decision made without proper authorization, every financial movement that didn't match internal records, every conversation that contradicted official statements. At first, it felt paranoid, like I was overreacting, but the more I collected, the clearer it became. This wasn't just finance betrayal. This was risk, legal risk, reputational risk, the kind that could destroy everything she had just taken from me. And she didn't see it, because she was too focused on control. One evening, Mark approached me again. This time, his tone was different, more cautious. "Something's off," he said quietly. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't deflect. "I know," I replied. He hesitated before asking, "Are you still involved in the ownership side?" I paused, just for a moment, then gave him the same answer Claire had given everyone about me. "I handle what I need to," I said. He nodded slowly, but I could see it, that same look again. Only this time, it wasn't pity, it was curiosity. And that's when I realized something important. I wasn't the only one starting to question this family business dispute. Claire may have controlled the narrative, but she didn't control the truth. And the truth has a way of surfacing, especially when someone is patient enough to let it. Once I stopped reacting, everything became clearer. Patterns, gaps, risks, and most importantly, timing. Claire wasn't reckless. That's what made this family business dispute so dangerous. She didn't steal loudly. She repositioned quietly, shifted authority, redirected control, reframed the narrative until it felt natural. But even the most controlled system has pressure points. You just have to wait long enough to see where they form. The first real crack appeared in the numbers. It always does. Claire had started fast-tracking supplier contracts. On paper, it looked efficient. Better margins, faster turnaround, fewer approvals. But when I compared the historical data to the new agreements, something didn't align. The pricing structure was inconsistent, not dramatically, just enough to go unnoticed in a casual review, but consistent enough to raise questions. I didn't flag it, not internally. Instead, I documented it. Dates, contracts, approval chains. Every small inconsistency added to the same growing file. Because this wasn't just finance betrayal. This was exposure.
inconsistencies that Claire had missed in her hurry to take control. The second crack came from the outside, an audit notice, routine, annual, nothing unusual, except this time Claire handled it personally. That alone told me everything, because historically, I had always led audit preparation. Every document, every explanation, every reconciliation. Now, suddenly, I was not needed. That night I stayed late, not to interfere, just to observe. From across the office, I watched Claire going through files, quickly, too quickly, skipping steps I knew were critical. She wasn't preparing, she was reacting, and that's when I understood the shift. She didn't just take control of the company, she took responsibility for everything that came with it, including the parts she didn't fully understand. That was the risk. That was the opening. The next morning, Mark stopped by my desk again. "You've seen the audit notice?" he asked. I nodded. He lowered his voice. "Something feels off this year." I held his gaze for a second, then asked quietly, "What specifically?" He hesitated before saying, "Decisions are being made faster than they're being checked." Exactly. That was the difference between us. Claire moved fast. I moved precisely. And in a situation like this inheritance drama, precision wins. I didn't need to expose her. Not yet. All I needed to do was make sure everything stayed exactly as it was. Because if there's one thing audits do well, it's reveal the truth people try to organize away. So I stepped back even further, did my job, stayed quiet, watched carefully, and for the first time since all of this started, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not grief, control. Because this family business dispute was no longer happening to me, it was unfolding for me. And Claire? She still believed she was 3 steps ahead, but she made one critical mistake. She assumed I would fight her directly. Instead, I let her build the outcome herself.
The audit started on a Monday. Quiet, professional, routine, at least on the surface. 2 external auditors arrived just after 9 a.m., polite, methodical, the kind of people who didn't need to raise their voices to make you nervous. I had worked with auditors before. I knew their rhythm, their patience, their ability to sit in silence until the truth revealed itself. Claire greeted them confidently. Of course she did. She always knew how to perform when people were watching. "I'll be handling everything," she said smoothly, and just like that, she placed herself at the center of it all. I stayed at my desk, quiet, invisible, exactly where she wanted me. The first day went smoothly. Basic documentation, general overviews, nothing alarming. The second day shifted. Requests became more specific, contract timelines, approval trails, financial justifications. That's when I saw it, the first crack in her composure. Just a flicker, but it was there. She started pausing before answering, double-checking files, cross-referencing documents she should have already known by memory, because the system she had built wasn't hers, not completely. By the third day, the questions got sharper, more precise, less forgiving. "I'm noticing inconsistencies between these supplier contracts and your historical pricing models," one of the auditors said calmly. Claire smiled, controlled, prepared. "I can clarify that," she replied, but her explanation didn't land cleanly. It almost worked. Almost. I watched from across the room, pretending to focus on my screen, but every word, every pause, every hesitation, I tracked it all. Because I knew exactly where the gaps were. I had mapped them weeks ago. "This approval chain doesn't match your internal governance structure," the auditor continued. Another pause, longer this time. Claire opened a file, scrolled, clicked, searched. Silence filled the room, heavy, unavoidable, and that's when it happened. "Who previously handled financial oversight?" the auditor asked. For the first time, Claire looked in my direction. Not directly, just enough. A split second of calculation. "This used to be a shared responsibility," she said carefully. "Used to be." The auditor followed her glance, and then turned to me. "Would you be able to assist us with some of these historical clarifications?" The room went completely still. This was the moment, the one I had been waiting for, the one where everything in this family business dispute could shift. I could have exposed everything right there, every detail, every instance of finance betrayal, every manipulated document. But I didn't. Instead, I gave a small, calm nod. "Of course," I said. No emotion, no hesitation, no revenge in my voice, just clarity. And that's when the balance changed. Not dramatically, not loudly, but permanently. Because from that moment on, the truth was no longer hidden behind Claire's narrative. It was being examined, line by line, by people who didn't care about family, didn't care about image, didn't care about control. Only facts. And facts don't bend. Claire didn't lose everything that day. Karma doesn't work like that. But something far more important happened. She lost control of the story. And once that happens, everything else is just a matter of time. The audit didn't end in a single moment. There was no dramatic announcement, no instant collapse. That's not how real consequences work. Instead, it unfolded slowly, quietly, like everything else in this family business dispute. Over the next few weeks, more questions surfaced, more inconsistencies were flagged, more decisions Claire had made were pulled apart and examined under a level of scrutiny she couldn't control anymore. I didn't need to push anything. I didn't need to prove anything. The system did that for me. Eventually, the conclusion came, not publicly, not loudly, but officially. Certain contracts were deemed improperly approved, internal governance had been bypassed, financial oversight had not been properly maintained. They didn't call it finance betrayal, they used more professional language, but the meaning was the same. Claire wasn't removed from the company, but her authority, it was restricted, significantly. Oversight was reinstated, external controls were introduced, and most importantly, ownership structure reopened. That part took longer. Legal reviews, documentation, back and forth discussions. But this time, I wasn't on the outside looking in. I didn't fight for revenge. I didn't try to destroy her. I just told the truth, when asked, where it mattered. And in the end, the outcome was simple, fair, balanced. I regained my rightful share, not because I demanded it, but because it couldn't be logically denied anymore. Claire and we don't talk much now, not the way we used to. Some things don't go back to how they were, and maybe they're not supposed to. Because this inheritance drama changed something fundamental in me. I stopped confusing silence with loyalty. I stopped assuming that history guarantees fairness. And I stopped believing that people won't choose control over connection. But I also learned something else, something more important. You don't always have to fight loudly to win. You don't have to destroy someone to hold them accountable. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back, stay patient, and let the truth reveal itself. Because in the end, this wasn't just a family business dispute. It was a lesson about trust, about boundaries, and about knowing your value even when someone tries to erase it. I still work at the company, but it feels different now, clearer, more defined, not because things are perfect, but because they're honest. And honestly, that's worth more than control ever was. So if you were in my place, watching everything you built slowly being taken away, would you have walked away? Or would you have stayed and waited for the truth to surface?